But it's really good to be back. It is really, frankly, I think I was ready for a little bit of refreshment to be away. So Diane and I traveled to Southern California to see our son Toby and his wife Aline. And they have 2 kids, Aiden and Autumn. So that was really great to connect with them. It was really fun. You know, it's also weird. We went down and saw some friends in Newport Beach and Redondo Beach and saw my brother and sister and a lot of stuff. You know, but it's weird. Diana, I spent over 20 years living in Southern California. It's a big portion of our life. So it's weird to go back because you go, wow, this feels so familiar. I mean, this is like, right? And it's all the people and relationships that matter. And it was really fun to connect because a lot of our lives were built there. Di and I have no regret of being in St. Louis. None. We're glad to be here. But I can't dismiss the fact that there were 20 years of real life being done there for us. Forest Home is a Christian conference center just outside of San Bernardino, California. My son lives in San Bernardino, and just outside is Forest Home. And Forest Home, so this morning it reminded me, in the front of the auditorium, they used to have this giant set of redwood planks. And on it, burned into it, huge so you could read it, was How Great Thou Art. You guys, when we sang that this morning, it's full and it's rich, right? And it's an old song, right? But it's something rich about it. And frankly, I heard you singing. We engaged. And then there was a song right afterwards this morning called Reckless Love. It's a pretty new song. And you guys, it is just as powerful for me as How Great Thou Art. That song is done so well. It says something so important and so powerful. And I heard you engage it. And I thought, you know what, the God that I experienced in Southern California is the same God as in St. Louis today. And he is as fresh today as he has ever been. He is as real and dynamic today as he's ever been. And so to be connected to him and be connected to his people is an incredible privilege. And guess what? There are hundreds and thousands of people that live within, I was going to say a 9-iron, but I would probably need a wood and several times over, that live around here who don't know that God and have not connected to his people, that would enrich their lives to do that. So I'm excited, just about where we're at and where we're going. So all that, are we ready back there? I had to do a little filler. We had computer problem. And okay, so here we are. We're in a new series this summer. What's that? Yeah, that's right. I meant everybody. Yeah, I wanted to say it anyway. It just gave me a real excuse to do a little filler. All right, we're in a series this summer. This is the graphic. It's called Suit Up. When you suit up, especially for armor, it suggests a battle. A spiritual battle is what we're talking about this summer. And here's the scary thing. I was talking to some people downstairs this morning. I really hesitated to even do this series because when you begin to talk about it, you become aware of it, and it's more in your face. And so I'll have to tell you the reality of the spiritual battle that's real. It's going on. And sometimes we can ignore it and kind of shove it under the rug and kind of hope it's not happening or just act like it's not, but it's still there. But you bring it out from underneath the rug, and then it's in your face, and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't really want to do this. We could put it back under the rug. But it's real, and it's real in each one of our lives, no matter how old we are. The spiritual battle is really real, and in every new stage of our lives, it becomes real, right? So I just did a wedding last night. The Moores, Jim and Kelly Moore's daughter got married, just did a wedding, and they're so happy, and it's so great, and it's going to be so neat. And guess what? This morning they woke up and they have bad breath and they have to comb their hair, and they're going to have a conflict here somewhere in the next week, and they're going to wonder, really? Did I want to do this? And there's going to be a spiritual battle that starts. As a student, you're going to go back to school here in a little while. And guess what? There is going to be a spiritual battle, a reality there of you having to deal with life. Because life happens in high school, right? And sometimes it's hard when it goes on in high school. And some of you are going to get a new job this week, or this month, or this year. And guess what? It's going to be awesome. And it's also going to be hard because there's going to be real battles there. And guess what? When you get a little bit older, you begin to feel like, wow, my body's falling apart. And my life's falling apart. And I thought when I got older, everything was supposed to be smooth. Right? That's what, my picket fence and my nice white house and my get a functional house and a functional fence and a functional wife and a functional dog, and we'll get functional kids, and we'll just sit around and function. And guess what? We're just going to function But guess what? It's all broken function, right? It's a battle. Nothing's ever perfect. I hate that part of life. I want it to be right. I want it to be perfect. I want it to be easy. I want it to be smooth. Guess what? It is a spiritual battle. Like it or not, there is a spiritual battle that goes on. And we have to be ready for it and be educated by it. So you're going to have to suit up to do it. That's where we're headed all this summer. Now, on this next slide, there's a line. There's a spiritual battle above the line and below the line. And above the line, it looks like this. There's spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places that are reality. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. And it's beyond what we see and beyond what we understand totally, though it's described in the scripture somewhat. But there is this battle going on not between God and Satan because they're equals. They're not. Satan was created as a beautiful angel who decided to rebel and do his own thing. And he decided, I'm going to compete with you, God. And God's like, wants to say, in a sense, are you kidding me? What a joke. But he made him powerful. And that rebellion is real. He gave him free will, and he chose it to rebel. Same free will he gave us, and we rebel. And there's a battle that's going on. Someday it's going to be brought to an end. Satan knows it. It'll be brought to an end. He'll be captured, thrown into jail for 1,000 years, then released one more time, and then he'll be thrown into the lake of fire, destroyed for eternity. But until then, he is the prince of this earth, and he is set free to wreak havoc in our lives. Not because God thinks it's funny, but because to be given free will, you are also given the responsibilities of the consequences of that free will. Every one of us is. Anywhere we're living with that reality. And not only what Satan does, but what we do. And the consequences of that. Now, below the line, the scriptures talk about there being a battle on 3 levels. This is where we get engaged. This is in our world. This is what we do. And it's in the area of the world, the flesh, and the devil. Okay? Now, let me just read this passage. It kind of sets all that up. It says here in Ephesians chapter 6. Paul says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. We can't do this fight in our own power, in our own strength. We were designed to live out of the strength of God. And he says, I want you to be strong in me. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. You see, the devil has a strategy. He is a strategist. He is very strategic. He's smart. He has a strategy for your life. He has a strategy for mine. We're going to talk about some of those today. But there is a scheme that he is living out. Now let's circle it. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. There is a battle. We wrestle with that which is beyond even flesh and blood. It's real. Because you and I are more than flesh and blood. We're more than just simply material things. We are a spiritual being. You are. You have a soul. And there's a battle for your heart and for your mind going on. Verse 13, therefore, circle it, therefore, take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. We're going to have to put on the whole armor of God. We'll get to the armor here in a few weeks, but we're going to talk about the battle first. So, I want to just remind you about how we started this. First of all, evil, as well as good, has an author, and those authors are not the same. They're different. Secondly, the author of good is so because of the content of his character. It is the content of God's character, the truth of who he is, that determines his goodness and his goodness towards us. On the other side, the author of evil is so because he questions the veracity of God's character. The very fundamental, he questions God and says, you're really not who you say you are. You're really not trustworthy. In fact, you really kind of want to ruin my life. You want to take all the power away. You want to take all the good things away. You're holding out on me, God. That's what the suggestion is. And that is the author of evil who suggests that. It is the author of evil is so because of his own rebellious pride. He wanted to compete with God. It says this, I am willing to compete with God. And you guys, we get sucked into the same thing of being willing to compete with God. So, today, as we look at this kind of battle above the line and below the line, today, let's just highlight it in red here. We're going to talk about the world. The battle we have with the world. And let me just kind of put a title on that just for a second. It's going to be the external solicitation to sin. The external solicitation to sin. It's going to be from outside. And there's going to be, the world's going to say to us, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, you know what? You're headed that way. It's not such a great idea. Why don't we do it this way? I got a better idea for you. Let me solicit your heart. Let me grab your mind and see if we can pull it in. And I have something to offer you that God doesn't have. And that's what I'm going to offer you. That's what the world says to us. It's an external solicitation. Hey, don't be satisfied with what God has. I have something more. And it's a little shinier. It's a little prettier. And he's going to suggest it to us. It's the external solicitation to draw us and tempt us to question the veracity of God. That's what he's going to ask us to do. So we're going to talk about the world and this external solicitation to sin. Now, we're going to go and use a passage out of 1 John. So John was one of Jesus' friends, one of his really good friends. In fact, John is the one who knew. He had this weird understanding. Every time he writes, he always wrote, and he said, I am the one that Jesus loved. He's not saying Jesus didn't love the other ones, but he was so confident in the fact that Jesus loved him. I don't know exactly, why, but he just, man, he loved me. Have you ever had someone like that? And you just trust him. I had a guy when I was a freshman in college. I was involved, I was a football player at the University of Northern Colorado. And there was a guy that was on Athletes in Action staff, part of the Campus Crusade for Christ. And I was just around him a year, and he was on staff, and he was working with athletes. And every time I was with Sam, and when we left, he'd just stick out his big old hand. He was a quarterback in college. And he'd just stick out his big old hand and say, Kevin, I love you. I didn't even know what to do with it. But I'll tell you what, it gave me life. And I thought, wow. And I could tell he really loved me. I was the one that Sam loved. That's what John felt. I'm the one that Jesus loved. Wow. Jesus just stick out his big old hand and say, John, I love you. I don't know if that's how it happened then, but in our culture, that's what would have happened. Or he'd have given him a bro hug and said, man, I love you. All right. So in 1 John, he's going to write this. Now, you guys, before we even read the passage, let me just highlight this. There are 6 times one word appears here. Okay, let's highlight all those real quickly. 6 times the word world. So in 3 verses, you get it 6 times. So obviously, he's going to say something about it. So we're going to have to define what the world is first, okay? So here's the deal. Let's just define it. The Greek word for world here is the word cosmos. It's been made famous by Carl Sagan over the years, the cosmos. So the word world is used in the scriptures 6 different ways. So we're going to have to figure out which one of those is this, all these worlds, all these cosmoses, if you will. What's it mean? So here's the first one. In the scriptures, for one time, or many times where it's used, like in Matthew and John and Acts, it's just the earth, the cosmos, the world, the earth, this sphere in which we live. The second meaning of it is the earth in contrast to heaven. It sometimes contrasts us with the fact that there are the heavens and there's the earth. So it's used that way. The third way it's used is just referring to the human race, or to mankind, the world. For God so loved the world, right? So what's he saying there? Well, it's really referring to the human race, to mankind. That's what God loves, is you and I. The fourth is a term to distinguish Gentiles from Jews. So even there are times where the Gentiles are called the world, as opposed to the unique role that the Jews had in God's economy. And so it's used that way. The fifth way it's used is for the sum total of our possessions. That's the world, what we possess, or the sum total of that. There's a sixth way. I think it's the most common thing, or kind of sense of what the world in this passage is going to be about. It is the current condition of human affairs in alienation from, in opposition to God. There is a world system that says we are going to take our stand against God. And it is authored by Satan himself, but it is a world system of being alienated or separated from God and being in opposition to him. That's going to be, on the most part, what we talk about here. So let's go back to the passage. And before we start, let's kind of circle just a few more things. 3 times in one verse, it's going to use the word love. So let's just circle those real quick. So we've got a lot of love going on, and we got a lot of world going on here. So let's look at the word love real quickly. The Greek word for it is agape, or in this particular passage, twice it's a verb, once it's a noun. So it's going to be agape or agapo, or agapate, is what it refers to. And it is a love which centers on moral preference. Love is not just a feeling. It is a choice, it is a decision. It is that which centers on moral preference. In fact, the word means to prefer. That's what agape means, really, is to prefer. What do you prefer? What do you choose to make a priority? What's the highest value? What's most important? That which you love is that what you do. You know, you want to see what you really love? Look at your day timer. Look at your schedule. That's what you love. You want to see what you love? Look at your checkbook. That's what you love. It is that which you prefer. It is that which is the highest priority. It is actively doing what the Lord prefers then. Is the agape love of God is to actively do what the Lord prefers. Maybe here's a bottom line definition. A strong, intentional, courageous, and discriminating affection which involves choice and selection of God's greater good. That's what love is. It is not a feeling. It is not just simply come and go like the weather. It is a choice and a decision of intentionally and courageously preferring this over that. And in this case, it is a preferring God over the things of the world. Now we're going to talk about it, okay? So here we go. Let's go back to the passage. It's verse 15. Do not love, do not prefer, do not intentionally and courageously, do not love the world. This place that is in rebellion from God himself. Wow, don't choose that. Or the things of the world. All those possessions, all those activities, all that scheme of Satan. Do not prefer that, he says. If anyone, now this, you guys, this statement ought to just like kick us right in the backside, okay? If anyone loves, prefers the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Wow, you talk about a statement of disseminating or dissecting. That is it. When I love the things of the world, the love of God is not a part of my life. It's absent. It's gone. It's not in him. It's not in me when I choose that. It's not that I can live on both sides of this. Say I love God and do what the world tells me. They don't mix, he says. Kevin, they don't mix. I so want to mix them, right? I don't want there to be a dividing line. But there is. Anyone who loves the world, prefers this system of the world that's an alienation from God and in opposition to him, then the love, the preference of the Father isn't in him. It's not there. Kevin, stop kidding yourself. Stop faking yourself out. It's not there. Wow. Verse 16, for all that is in the world. And now he's going to define it. You go, okay, well, what's he talking about? What are those things in the world? So here they come. There are going to be three things. It's going to be really straightforward. First of all, for all that is in the world, let's highlight it, the desires of the flesh. The desires of the flesh. And you guys just, maybe let's really see the impact of this, see the strength of this statement. So here's what it means. Let's kind of isolate the desires of the flesh. Let's just kind of isolate it up there. Yeah, there you are. Great. So the desires, what does that mean? So here's the Greek word. It's epithumia. Epithumia means this. It is a driving desire. It's not just like a soft little word. It means to desire the flesh means to have this driving desire that moves us to even do things we don't want to do. Remember when Paul said, I do the very things that I don't want to do. I don't do the things I want to do. I do the things I don't want to do. It is a driving desire that is built into the sinfulness of man's heart. And he drives with desire for certain things. Now the flesh, the Greek word is sarx, from which we get the word easily sex, right? Of course. So sarx, it is this physical passions and pleasures. Now you guys, here's the deal. Satan always takes what is good and he just twists it. He never takes things that are not good. I mean, we'd all say no to that, right? We'd go, well, that's stupid. I'm not doing that. No, he takes good things and he just twists it. And all of a sudden we have this thing, these physical passions and pleasures, which God gave us. Guess who invented sex? God. You think, really? Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. You know, we don't talk about sex. He goes, well, I don't know, but God talks about it all the time. He thought it up, man. It was his idea. He goes, man, the design is going to be amazing. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be effective. And it's for the good of my people. Wow. And Satan goes, well, let's take it and let's just twist it a little bit. Just make it a little different. Let's shine it up. See if people buy in. The desires of the flesh. You know, obviously, we first talk about sexuality. It's such a huge part of who we are. Isn't it interesting at the fall? When the fall happened, what was the very first thing they did? The very first thing they did. They took some fig leaves and sewed them together and covered up their sexual parts. Somehow this is so core to the human being. And you take it and you twist it. And you guys, we live in a culture that has taken sex and has twisted it to the detriment of the individual and the hurt of the whole. We've twisted it. God, your design doesn't matter. We have our own design. I'm a free human being who can do anything I want to do. But problem is, it's to their own detriment. And let's just not say their detriment. Let's say our detriment. Whether it be pornography, that totally takes the ability to be intimate and puts it onto a screen. And it's not just men. 1 out of every 4 people addicted to pornography is a woman. It is not just men. And we have given away and cheapened what God had made for something that was never intended to be. It has twisted it. And we could talk about homosexuality and the fact that it's unnatural, as the scriptures talk about. And we can say it's been twisted, and it has. But it's also been twisted in heterosexuality, right? The amount of sex outside of marriage, pre-marriage, living together, it's not a big deal. Guess what? It is a big deal. Do you know that those who cohabitate before they're married, the odds of getting divorced are 64%? Far above any of the others. Why? Because it undermines the ability to trust. That's why. And we twist this thing that was meant for beauty, and we've made it something destructive. This desire of the flesh. You guys, our culture is out of control. Right in the middle of the Me Too movement, there is still incredible, the whole sex trafficking world is growing at incredible speeds. Both men and women. Do you know in Haiti when we go there are people who go into villages and say, I know you're so poor that we want to help your kids, so give us your kids, we'll take them over to the next town and we'll put them in school. Well, they put them in school, all right, in a sex trade school. And those kids are not only used there, but around the world. You know, one of the largest sex trade operations in the United States is St. Louis, Missouri. You guys, we have taken what God meant to be beautiful, and we have messed it up. And not just out there, but in us, right? The desires of the flesh. This is not just some sort of pretty little biblical thing. You know, this is a battle for the hearts and lives of people. The desires of the flesh. It comes from the world. It comes from a system that is in opposition to God and in rebellion from Him. And in fact, anything that's not of Him, really, at the end of the day, we're going to find that it hurts people. It doesn't help people. It's not a loving thing to do. Oh, it's no big deal. Go ahead and do that. In fact, we'll endorse it. At the end of the day, it hurts people. All right, so I'm sorry. I'm a little fired up. Okay, the desires of the flesh. Okay, there's another one here. Not just the flesh, but the desire of the eyes. Okay, so you think, well, let's isolate that. Let's kind of figure out what that one's all about too. Desire spells the same, epithumia. It means this driving desire. And of the eyes, the Greek word is where we get the word optometry from. And it means the eye, or it really means here the mind's eye. What it really means is personal possessions. When we see something, we like it, we want it. Somehow I need it, right? That's what we go. Well, that's nice. Oh, I'd like to have that. No, I don't want. I don't like to have it. I need that. I want that thing, you know, because somehow it's going to do something for me. I need a bigger boat. I do. I mean, I need a boat at this point, but I need a bigger boat. I need a bigger boat because then I have more people on it, right? I need a bigger and nicer car. I do. I could talk myself into that in a New York second. This goes way back. I remember in high school, I saw this pair of shoes. I don't know why. I'm not a shoe guy. I'm a jacket guy. If you come to my house, I have like 5,000 jackets. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. My wife makes fun of me, and she should. But I want these shoes. But at that point, that was just after the Civil War. But they had these shoes. They were $100. That's even expensive still, sort of, kind of. You know what I mean? But this is way back. $100. I wanted those shoes so badly. So I saved up and I bought those shoes. I think I wore them 3 times. Because they didn't do for me. In fact, they hurt my feet. It was like, that was the dumb part of it. I just wanted those things. What else have I wanted? A position of prestige, of power, of respect, to be liked, to be looked up to. I want a bigger and better house. I want a bigger and better car. I want a bigger and better job. I want to, whatever, right? We keep wanting things. We live in a culture where you can get things. You live in a place like Haiti, there's not much to be got, frankly. But you know what? It's really no different there. It's the same thing. They want something a little bit bigger, a little bit better. And the lust of the eyes, the desire of the eyes for these personal possessions. And I know we know this, but we have to be reminded, I think, because you guys, at the end of the day, it is the content of your character that actually carries the day. It doesn't really matter how big your house is, or your car, or how new it is, or how many things you have, or the size of the ring, or the size of your shoe, or the new shoes I got. It is the content of your character that actually matters, not what you have. Well, let's go on. Not only the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes, but the pride of life. You guys, let's look at it just quickly. This is really what it means. It's our selfish ambition, our powerful positions. We want more. We have this inadequateness inside of us that we sense, and we think, oh, maybe we'll satisfy with getting a new position, a new thing, a new whatever. Selfish ambition, the pride of life. I accomplished this. I am in charge. It's full of a lot of I's, right? And it's from the world. It doesn't have much to do with real life, the way God would design it to be. Jesus never owned anything that we know of except for his cloak. That's all he ever had. Wow. Never owned a house. He never was in an elected position. He didn't want to be mayor. He is the Son of God. I mean, that's a pretty big position, but on earth he had nothing. Nothing. He only had his character, and he lived it out every day, in every way, with every person, perfectly. Wow. So let's go back. Let's kind of put those 3 in a box. The desires of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, and the pride of life. That is what is in the world, and what we get sucked into. You guys, grab onto that. Do that. But look at this, and let's highlight it in blue here. It is not from the Father, but from the world. That's where that comes from. It's not from him. It's from the world. Now let's wrap it up in verse 17. And the world, this system in opposition and in rebellion from God, is passing away along with its desires. It's short term. It's not going to last forever. But, look at this, transition. But, whoever does the will of God abides forever. It is lasting. It is deep. It matters. It goes forever. Wow. And to fight this fight, we're going to have to put on the suit of armor, right? So let's just run through it real quick. We'll cover it more later this summer. But we have the suit of armor we have to put on. And first of all, we have to put on the belt of truth and decide what is actually really true that I'm going to hang my life on. Secondly, we're going to have to put on the breastplate of righteousness to live in his righteousness, not our own, but in his, to put it on to cover the most incredibly important parts of our body, our heart. We're going to have to put on our shoes that are the gospel of peace. Wow. We're going to have a shield of faith that will extinguish the arrows of an enemy. We're going to have to put on the helmet of salvation to know that I am covered by his salvation. We're going to have to use the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, to fight back. That's what we're going to have to do. So let me ask you a question. Just one. So therefore, what now? What do we do? Let me ask you this question. What are you living for? We should ask the question, what are we living for? But to make it personal for each one of us, so I want to say, what are you living for? And then I have to turn it around and ask myself, Kevin, what are you living for? What am I living for? But let me make it personal today for all of us. What are you living for? And let me just ask the question, is it the temporal pleasures of your body? Are you just satisfying that? And you know it's not really satisfying. It's never enough. Whether it be porn or some sort of food, really is your God? The physical pleasures of that? Food's a good thing, right? God gave it to us. But we've twisted it. Is it maybe some sort of addiction? Are you self-medicating in a way to get pleasure for your body that really actually is destroying you? Are you living for the temporal pleasures of your body? Secondly, are you living for the trinkets you try to collect to satisfy your felt needs? They're just trinkets, right? They're all going to go away. They're all going to burn up. You're just going to wear them 3 times. It's crazy, right? You get a bigger boat, and guess how often you get to use it? Twice a year. And it just sits. And spiders start making their nests all over my boat. I hate those spiders. Just rust. Are you living for the trinkets? How about thirdly? Are you living for the selfish ambitions that are aimed at proving your worth to yourself and to other people? Are you trying to gain some sort of position? And that just doesn't happen out there in the secular world. That happens in the church world. Is that what we're looking for? And we do all of this in exchange for the real treasures of life and the depths of the human heart that are only met by him. They're only really met by him. Nothing wrong with physical pleasure. God made it, right? But in its right way. Nothing wrong with having something if we use it in the right way. Probably in America, we've gone overboard. I was in California this week, and I used the term first world, second world, third world. You know, we always say first world problems. And I was corrected by my California friends. They no longer use those terms. So I'm like, okay, what do we use? And they go, it's the majority world or the minority world. And Kevin, you live in the minority world because the majority of the world is poor. It has very, very little. You live in the minority of the world. So I was corrected. But the reality is the majority of the world has very little. And we in the minority world have a lot. Do we live for that? Do I live for my own selfish ambition, my own... Is that what's going on? James 4:4 says this. You adulterous people, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? It is war with God. Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God himself. Wow. You guys, I don't know about you, but this really kicks my backside. I mean, this like rocks my world. This is hard stuff. You know, this week I was reading a story about a young family, and there was a boy 5 years old, and he had a brother who was 8 years old, and the boy who was 5 years old had a kind of a dime. It was kind of dirty, kind of rusty, didn't look so great, but he had a dime. His older brother had a brand new shiny nickel. And so the older brother goes to the younger brother and he says, hey, I'll exchange this really shiny new big coin for that dirty little coin that you have. And the younger brother didn't really understand the value of the coins, and so he said, well, it seems like a good idea to me. So we exchanged. I told that story at the elder meeting, and Brad Pinnell began to laugh, and he said, man, I did that to my sister all the time. And in fact, he'd have 3 pennies, and he'd go to his sister and say, hey, I got 3 pennies, 3 coins. I'll exchange 3 for your 1 quarter. He says, I did it all the time. And you guys, here's the deal. That's exactly what Satan does. That's exactly what the world does. It says, man, I got a shiny nickel for you. Just give me your dime. And we do it. The desires of our flesh, the desires of our eyes, the desire of our own prideful world. And we give up this incredible treasure that God has for us for the chump change of this world. And it is chump change. And you guys, if we're going to fight back, we're going to have to suit up. Because it is a battle. All right? We're going to continue putting this together this summer. We'll get to that armor, but we are going to have to suit up, or we're going to have to understand, first of all, what the battle is. This week we talked about the world and the desires of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life. So this week, could I encourage us? Fight back. Fight back. Okay? If you're struggling with sexual things, that's the one place where you don't want to stand firm. It's the place where you run away. Scriptures tell us to run from that. Run away. But fight back by running away if it's in the area of sexuality. Okay? The rest of it, stand firm. Take it on. Let's pray. Father, we are such foolish people that we so easily give up our dime for a shiny nickel. We give up the treasures of you for the trinkets of this world. And somehow we think there will be no consequences, no impact, no difference. We're willing to do damage to ourselves and to others and kind of push you aside and not care. Father, I first pray that you would draw us back. Draw us to yourself. Father, give us a love not for the world, but like John 3:16, that we would love your people and you above all else. May you redeem us. Do new things. Do things that lift people up, that value them, because we value you above all the things of this world. And that's what we pray as your people together. Amen.